Good morning.
Hey, greetings from Oklahoma.
Hey.
Yeah, I got to share this coffee cup. I don't know if I've shared.
I don't know.
this with
Will
our-
it be mirrored?
I don't know.
I don't know
Let's
if you're
see,
going to be able
can
to
you
read it.
that?
I don't think so. Dad, you've always been like a father to me.
My brother got that from my dad several years ago.
Yeah.
And it's still one of my favorites. So I share that with folks from time to time on our client meetings, what have you. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's a Wednesday, White Hat Wednesday.
Go ahead and shout out, say good morning, and where you're all are
let us
coming
know where
from.
you're listening from. There is Shelley.
Hello, Shelley. Good morning.
Swimming with what?
With
rain.
All the rain. Oh, yeah. Well, I wish that they not here in Guyman. It's so funny. When you talk to people that have lived here for forever, the rainfall precipitation coming from the sky is always like a big thing that people talk about.
Yeah.
And it's never in inches.
Yeah, I've always told people that, having grown up out here, and we had farm and ranch, and I always heard my dad talk about rain in hundredths of an inch. We got 37 hundredths. What? Yeah. Nobody else talks like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's dry country. It's mostly the irrigated farms out here.
It is. When we first got out here, I've heard stories about this lake called Lake Optima.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Optima,
Lake that apparently it was they got federal funding or something or approval back in the 40s to build this dam to create this lake, and they didn't get around to actually making it or starting construction on it until
maybe late 70s.
So by the time it and they even like paid to have people's homes moved out of the floodplain up onto higher ground because they were going to have this glorious massive lake. And again, they measure rain by the hundredths.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it was done, there was no water to hold back. And so, I hear these stories. It's like that was the big project that meant nothing. And I'm sure everybody has stories like that around where they live. But so Jim took me out there when we came in this last time. And it's this massive thing that
it's just a big dry hole.
It's just a dry hole.
With a massive dam. So but that's not what folks came to talk about.
That's not
There's
what
a whole geological story that we can share one day, but not today.
But it's funny how long it takes those wheels of progress, government, whatever, to move to get something done. And it's like, doesn't matter anymore. So dry here, enjoy the rain.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There you go. Summary.
There was not a Reader's Digest version of that at all.
Can I give a couple of announcements?
Yes.
So we got Friday. We're going to talk CPI and GAP. We're going to really have these guys educate our listeners because we got Tim and Taylor Bird from Dealer RE. I think they live in North Carolina. Their business is out there. And so their folks have been around the reinsurance business a long time. And we've invited them to talk about CPI and GAP. Like I have questions. Like I've been around this industry a long time and I have questions around some of this stuff. So they're going to come educate us on those two products and solutions for kind of, ancillary products or reinsured products for buy here, pay here. And then Monday, the 13th, this coming Monday, Chuck Bonanno will join us. So looking forward to having Chuck on. We'll easily find plenty to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. Chuck. And then Friday, we don't have anything yet, guests for White Hat Wednesday next week. But the next Friday, isn't that Oh, that's not when Brent and
that's going to be the following Monday, the 27th.
Yeah, we have a lot of invitations out right now for.
We got a couple we're trying to firm up, so we'll get those on the calendar probably for that week of the 20th, and so we'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah,
so, a lot of great stuff. There's Karen Barnett,
and Bill Elizondo. Buenos dias.
So Bill is a tie-in. We picked up an article from Bill's NIADA 20 group. So good morning, Bill, and thanks for the share. Your article around the dealer, and I forget the state, but really it doesn't matter for this particular conversation. It's like we saw the thing about dealer getting fined for, I want to say the number was $350,000, and was a multi-year state investigation, and they end up finding them that amount of money. But bottom line is, this whole thing about doc fee to me is really interesting. It's one sliver of a larger conversation around how do we price stuff and why? What's the what's the larger goal around all of this stuff? So the question today is, what's the point? Why do we choose to run these high dock fees? What do we feel like we're gaining?
Well, and it kind of, to me, from, outside observer, that's going to get old after a while. And people are going to, you're no longer an outsider observer. Is that it's when we're coaching a new, dealer into business, there's typically two questions that are asked about how much can I charge for X. One of them is interest rate.
Yeah.
And the other one is dock fees.
Oh, plus markup. They'll ask
And
you about how to price the car.
Yeah. But it's like, what can I that this conversation is about what can I legally charge? You can mark up your car to whatever you want to.
Yeah.
You can 3 times, 4 times what you paid for it. No one's going to come after you for that.
Well, you can't. I don't know if you can say that.
Okay, well, maybe someday.
They might. Yeah. They
but
might.
I mean, but it's these like interest rate and dock fees are two that people, a lot of people that we put into business, it's like they understand that this is like what is legal. And so we usually say, check with your state. We check with your state. And then the second question is, how do you want to be known by your consumer, by your customer,
your
by
community?
your
how
community?
do you want your community to view you? And so I think those are all. So that's why this dock fee is an example. And listen, dock fees have been around since there have been cars, as far as I can tell. But I think it just kind of begs the question, and it gives us an opportunity to kind of sort this out. Because one thing I'm thinking about is you're talking about that. So states have a cap on interest rate. Actually, in the U.S., there's a cap on what they allow a would-be creditor to charge their consumers in that state.
Yeah. And there's usually reason for that too. Yeah. They have a good reason. It's like protecting the customer or the consumer. We don't want people to be able to completely fleece them for 50% or whatever.
So the key word you have said there was protection. And listen, this whole conversation, if we allowed it to, could get kind of political. Like you might say, this is a political thing. This is regulatory. This is the government, putting their thumb on us and keeping us from doing whatever. I'm thinking, okay, you can fight that if you want to fight. I mean, I'm not interested in politics. I'm just interested in success of the consumer and the dealer. So, and I'm interested in a happy relationship between a consumer and a dealer. So in that regard, I'm just coming at this particular subject. When you decide a dock fee, because we've had these conversations with plenty of our clients.
Oh my gosh. Some that are in startup and some that are in business and have been
we're right there with them when they're setting up their DMS and setting these default settings where we want to put our dock fee. And so we have that conversation with virtually every client. And so we can take you inside the way that conversation goes when we do it. But it's like, I think the real question is, because we could bring 10 dealers to this subject this morning and they would feel differently. Like there would be varying answers about that. So I just find it interesting to pick this one thing and say, why do we care? And why does the state put a cap on it? In most states, there may be some that don't have it to my knowledge, but if the state's putting a cap on it, what are they doing? The word you used, Michelle, was protection. They're protecting consumers. It's one of the things they're charged with. They have a responsibility.
Well, and it's just not just the states, but like the CPFP has been, did I say that right?
CFPB.
Thank you. Has been talking about like ancillary charges, like the add-ons. And, it's to me, just reading and not being like super in depth and understanding all the moving pieces within buy here, pay here, it's in the same bucket.
Yeah.
For me. And so if it shouldn't be, then I haven't learned why. But from a consumer perspective, it's like, it's all in the same bucket.
Yeah. And this is just one example of the kind of conversations that I so look forward to bringing through, our virtual streaming and virtual platform and bring dealers to these conversations because it's a really interesting philosophical thing. Like to me, it's business, right? But it's also kind of on the squiggly line side of what Michelle and I talk about. It's like, what is the impact of those decisions when we decide to charge maximum allowable dock fee? So in short, when we talk about, we advise dealers when they're making that decision when they're brand new, is I would say, let's not charge the max.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Do you have to? charge a dock fee? Is there something that says that you have to charge something for a dock fee?
Well, it's been around forever. Virtually every DMS is going to have a default setting for a dock fee. You're certainly not required to charge a dock fee.
Okay, that's what it's like.
Yeah,
Are you required to charge some kind of dock fee?
I don't think, here's what I think you're
Uh-huh.
required to do. I think what makes total sense, regardless of what the government thinks about it, if you charge one consumer a dock fee, you need to charge every consumer
And exactly the same amount.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
Or
So
announce a
yeah.
policy change. If you're going to increase it, you just need to post a note as of January 1st, or our dock fee's going up or whatever. So you can change it, but you shouldn't. You should charge every consumer the same amount. We know that.
Okay, but it is an option.
Yeah.
But that most everybody
Yeah.
takes, but it's not required of them to charge this. It's an option they take, and then at that point, it's typically, well, how much?
Yeah. So I'll give you a quick example. Like back when I was a dealer myself, we used to have this policy. I mean, I just made it practice that even if you were just selling some car cash to some consumer, and maybe it's a little more a consumer with a little leverage, and they were like, I'll give you $2,000 for a car, but I'm not paying your dock fee.
Okay.
And I will say to them, well, here's the problem. I have to charge everybody a dock fee. So your contract is going to say $1,950 plus a $50 dock fee, or whatever the example is. Like
how much you're charging everybody else.
If you drive out of here with this car today, there's going to be a dock fee on your buyer's order, and there's going to be a dock fee,
Because but the reason for that is not because you're legally obligated to charge a dock fee, but you're legally obligated to treat every customer the same as your previous customer.
And some of that is going to be law. Like that's just common sense, right? That's you don't need the government to tell you if you charge every customer the same. So that was also just my policy. I was like, I'm not going to waive it. I'm not going to mark it off and I'm not going to do a reduction and take the dock fee off. I'm going to adjust the price, and you're going to pay a dock fee like everybody else.
Yeah.
It's got to be the same for everybody. And that's just the way.
So, I mean, but I would imagine that most consumers understand that when it's like, okay, if this is what's holding back this thing, then let's figure out how we can make this work, but I have to charge you the dock fee.
We never missed a sale over it. It's just, I had to explain to the customer, I don't have a choice. Like it's my policy, and we're going to stick to the policy. And, I sound like that old thing about, there's no reason for it. It's just our policy.
Yeah. I don't want to squirrel, but I want to be able to come back to what if you choose to change your dock fee? We can talk about that later. How you navigate that.
Okay, sure.
Because,
But I think the real point here is, as a new dealer, you got a choice to charge a customer $150 dock fee, or if your state allows it, a $350 dock fee or whatever. So
yeah, I think that I've seen
some $400.
Yeah, some that are, and I think that George Spat was talking about, like, for new dealers, it's like 14. I'm just pulling, but it's like it was a 4-digit number. Yeah.
And I think, again, you can't fight that. If you went into a dealership, a new car dealership, let's make it, and I went in there, same reason. If they were charging $1,000 dock fee, I would know that as a consumer before I bought, and I wouldn't let them add it. I wouldn't negotiate it in the deal. I understand I have to pay it. I understand you have to charge me the same thing you charge everybody, but because you're charging me that, now I'm only willing to pay this for the car.
So let's, before we kind of dive into some of the, there might be people out there that are listening. It's like, okay, what is a dock fee? What does a dock fee cover? What is it supposed to be for?
I'll just tell you what I've been told. Like, this is speaking as a non-attorney.
Right. we play one every once in a while on the morning show, but
remember, Jim and Michelle are not attorneys. We're not allowed to provide legal advice. This is not legal or accounting advice on the morning show. Okay, that concludes.
That was our disclaimer. Yeah.
So basically,
I need to have a ticker on the bottom.
Yeah, for sure.
Says,
Yeah. So bottom line is, what I was told, and this is way back when I got in the car business in the mid '90s as a salesperson, is like a dock fee is reportedly to allow the dealer to recover some of the administrative cost associated with preparing the title work. That, every time a customer buys a car, there's a title transfer that happens. So they're sort of, adding some administrative expense for the cost of transferring the title. I'm not sure why. I mean, it's like, to me, it's like a cost of doing business, because that particular function, if I'm just saying it, like, conversations with the CFPB and some dealer, and I was called in as an expert witness, I would just say it. The the reality is that, especially in buy here, pay here, that whole matter of processing the title and doing all that stuff, the reason the dealer does it, because it's as much in the interest of the dealer as it is in the consumer.
Of processing the title.
Processing the title,
Okay,
filing the lien, all the stuff.
it's like something. There are administrative things, you've finished the sales process, but there is more work to do
Yeah.
after, but before we start getting into collections and all of that. So there's more work to do.
So here's the question, just to stop on that, is like, why do we not just not charge a doc fee and let's let the customer do it? Let's just let the customer do it themselves. We're not going to do that.
It's not going to happen because I mean, so it's, I get that it's to cover the costs of things that are a protection to the consumer. So it's like all of the I's will be dotted and the T's will be crossed.
But it's also protection for the dealers. My point, I guess, is like, that's the thing I'm saying. It's a pretty thin argument when I'm sitting there saying, well, I have all these administrative costs. Well, yeah, you're doing those for your benefit too. So I realize I'm saying this as somebody who represents dealers. Like, we work, dealers are our clients. Like they're, and so when we advise them, we just say, look, if your state cap, maybe don't charge the max, because what I'm really trying to do is just demonstrate some level of goodwill with consumers. Doc fees have been around forever. So, people are going to expect to pay a doc fee. So why leave the money on the table? There's a whole different argument there we need to probably, flesh out, but it's like, why, if the consumer's okay with a $200 doc fee, and my state allows it, then why wouldn't I put it on there? Well, you can, but maybe think about charging 175 because everybody else is charging 200 or whatever. It's like, why would I do that? It's just it's a show of goodwill. It's a pattern that I want to have in place in my dealership. If the CFPB or the state attorney general comes knocking because there was some complaint, some miscommunication with the consumer, and they filed a complaint, and now somebody's knocking on my door, they're going to see a pattern when they walk in that we're charging less than what's allowed legally, APR, doc fee, they see a pattern. Look, we're not out here to abuse consumers. So to me, it's just an opportunity. And so what is that missed $25 as an example? What does that mean to me per deal? Not a lot. And we know that one of the things I was thinking about as we prepared for this, this subject is I look forward to the day that we've got enough data and the people are starting to assemble this. I would love for dealers to have the data at their fingertips to say, you know what, out of 100 deals that we do, X number of them end up in charge off, X number of them end up in accidents, X number end up in, so only certain percentage of those contracts actually make the payments all the way to maturity. Okay.
And I think there's a lot of dealers out there that have been doing this for a long time that could, pretty much so say X percentage of them.
They probably could guess. So I think, just the dealers listening, they look for yourself, go back and see. So my point is, you're only collecting that doc fee on a portion of the deals anyway, because if you think about it, you're negotiating with customer certain payment, that $200 doc fee is just going at the end of the note anyway, in a way.
Because you're usually not, I mean, you can say, hey, it's a 0 down plus title and taxes and doc fee or whatever. But it still is wrapped into the amount of the loan, regardless.
So I don't know what the number is. I wish I had it. It'd be an interesting thing to know, but only a certain percentage make it to the end, which means on those others, we actually, Amanda Sanchez confirmed that we actually just paid income tax.
That was something I was going to ask you, is that doc fees are taxed like,
I don't know.
Are
it probably
they taxed
varies by
the
state,
same?
whether sales tax would be, but income, it's income. Like there's no,
because it's not a tax, but it's not going. So it's just that's something to I think as a consumer, it's something to consider. This is taxed like everything else is. So it's basically every car, you just up the price of the car by X. And so because you're paying the same tax, the same, taxes. Yuck. I know, right? It's just that time of the year.
Sorry. We should be talking taxes this early in the day. Or this early in the year. Right? No, it's, this basically is the idea is we're, you're all this stuff, selling price. It's like we're paying income tax. When we mark the car up, we throw a doc fee on there. That's income to us. We're paying income tax. And on some of those contracts, they're not going to make it to the end. So we essentially paid income tax on money that we never collected. And yes, we recover it, of course, and it gets adjusted as we have charge-offs and expenses and whatever. But the reality is we're piling on is the phrase I kind of think about when I think about it. And I don't use that expression out loud very often, but it's like it kind of can look like if I'm a regulator who's charged with this responsibility of protecting consumers, one of the things I'm looking for is, and this is just me talking, this is me just acting like I'm fresh out of college as a CFPB regulator. I'm charged with the responsibility of finding, creditors who are out there piling on and taking advantage of consumers. So what does that look like? Well, I think we can all say if we're across the board, we're charging the max at every turn.
Yeah.
Then that's one of the things we've talked about before.
I have, as you were talking about this, I have like something that came up as outside of the car business, an example of this kind of thing happening. And I know for me as a consumer, like it frustrates the crap out of me. Because it's like, just tell me how much it is without all. So what I'm thinking about is like using Airbnb, VRBO, any of those kind of things that, when you're looking and you're scrolling through and trying to find the place, it's like, oh, a hotel would cost me $120 a night, but I can get this one for $90 a night. And so it's like, it's saving me money, and then I go into it and all of a sudden there's administrative costs that the owner is charging of $150, which it's like, why don't you say that on the front end? Because I'd be happy to look at it apples to apples instead of, it's like you're high, because to me, it feels like you're advertising. When I look at Airbnb, you're advertising a lower price to get me in the door, and then you're going to suck it to me with fees.
Yeah.
And it frustrates the heck out of me because it's like, just instead of saying it's $90 a night, just charge $100 a night and not have those administrative fees.
I'm glad you brought that up because you're going to the heart of this whole thing. That take it out of buy here, pay here. So why is their Airbnb owner doing that? Additional markup.
Exactly.
It's additional markup.
And it's like, oh, so you gotta talk to them a couple times. So you're going to charge people more for that. Right. It's like, that's what I understand when I'm sorry, boy, I got worked up about that just really fast. Well, I understand when I go to a hotel that when I go to a hotel, I'm going to get charged whatever taxes that the city, county, or state or federal, whatever. So I understand when I am booking a hotel room that there will be taxes. I have zero heartburn about, actually, I might have, it's like, really, the county is charging taxes for, you go to places like Orlando or Anaheim, and it's like there's this recreational that the government is charging. It's like, but that's them. That's not the hotel. So I have zero heartburn, but I have, or like a cleaning fee.
Yeah.
Seriously. It's like, why would I go somewhere and $100 a night? Maybe it's $50 for administrative, but they're charging me $150 for cleaning fee.
Yeah. Well, and that's similar to our doc fee because they are supposed to have some direct expense with that, right? They have some administrative costs. They're paying somebody actually, but likely they're marking that up too. They're likely charging that up. So it's additional
so they're making
profit.
Money off of paying someone to clean.
And
too.
I think most anybody, again, doc fees have been around so long and they're so well entrenched. And I'm not saying necessarily do away with them. I frankly don't see a lot of point in them. Like it's in the buy here, pay here at least. I can get it in a retail transaction because it's additional profit. It's a chance to make a little bit more money in the deal. I get that. But in a buy here, pay here deal, when we're financing that markup, then we're paying income tax on that markup. The consumer would, if we threw that same $200 over in the selling price of the car instead, they would still pay it. So the dealer still gets it. So this is just, it's really a tactic. And it's one that it feels, what's the word? Egregious. I mean, it feels like it's like, again, they've been around a long time. There are other words, but basically the idea is that it's just, it's an add-on. It's additional markup. And so the question becomes, do we really need that income? So let's, we got Hugo here. Let's ask Hugo. Do we really need that income? Yes.
Do you realize that though too? So it's like, what's the point if you're never going to realize it? Why add it?
Yeah. Well, and so some dealers, I know we've met dealers who are really in this business for the finance charge income. So, the the actual selling price of the car and some of that stuff, the markup in the car, they're really interested in the spread between what they pay for money and what they charge the consumer for money, right? And so that's out there. That business model and strategies out there. And so in that way, a $200 doc fee plus 20% interest, is like that's additional income to them. I get it, but I'm just saying, why not back it off a little bit? Why not make it a sensible number? You're reportedly charging it for administrative fees. Why not make it a sensible number that doesn't make you a target? Like, to me, it's just like, we can say the CFPB is out there kind of, scanning the horizon with, whatever, and
Who's
trying to find,
charging?
and
Yeah.
that to me is the low hanging fruit for them, is everybody that's charging max across the board. That strikes me as a place to go first,
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say that that someone is like, I've been charging max. And I want to lower it.
Mhm.
You mentioned that it's like if you've done it for one, you have to do it for all. So how does that shift happen? What do you do to make that shift if you choose to make a shift, whether it be to go down or up or
Yeah.
whatever? If you're changing that doc fee from what you have been charging for the last 10 years,
Okay.
what does that look like?
You mean if I just want to make a change,
If you
policy
want to
change?
make a
Well, I
policy
just would
change.
make an announcement well in advance so you could post it in the office and maybe, notify people by, well, I don't think
Do
you
you
need to
have to
notify.
notify past customers?
No, because it doesn't affect the new customer. It only affects new customers. So I think you would just post it in the office wherever that says effective January 1 or whatever date you pick, effective January 1, our doc fee will go from $150 to $200. And of course, you would put some spin on it, just like they do, with all the green stuff and environmental stuff. You'd put a spin on our cost of administration have gone up. So we're moving our doc fee, blah, blah, blah. You would just try to put the positive spin on it.
I appreciate that, but that just rubs me
It's
wrong.
offensive, isn't it?
It's offensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think Michelle has given a real good example of what it looks like for the consumer.
And it looks like for that green person just coming in, that for the CFPB that is like, what's the lowest hanging fruit?
Yeah.
That's kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting that, again, the whole subject is, it kind of ties back to customer retention, like customer satisfaction and customer retention. Is a customer going to not do business with you again because you charge $200 for a doc fee instead of 150? No, I don't think that's going to be a separator, right? I don't think that's going to be the difference. But I think that it really, our good friend Tommy out in Pennsylvania, he's been a dealer for 30 plus years now. And he and I kind of, had the same early education around buy here, pay here, which is, why don't we, of course, back then we had lower ACVs, shorter term notes. And so the idea was to make sure we were hyper focused on the customer having a good experience and buying from us again, especially shorter term notes. That becomes more important. But I could argue that regardless of the length of the note, you get one consumer, and if they're on a contract with you for 4 years and you're in a smaller market, and now that customer reaches the end finally, and they're so tired of this contract and so tired of doing business with you that they don't want to renew, they're going to go elsewhere. They're going to end up at Carvana or wherever, like you pick one. But it's like, why would we not create a solution? Because I feel like often we're very short-sighted, and this is not just buy here, pay here, it's sometimes in business overall. Why don't we charge a little less, have the customer have a really successful experience, get them to the end sooner than later, and then be able to
Move them in to
move them into another
vehicle.
car.
Yeah.
Because now look at your market. Now look at what you're earning from that customer over 10 years.
Yeah.
So, keep that customer with you. So this is just one example of how that becomes a thing. So
there's a couple things, and I posted, and I'm going to pop it up there again. Karen Barnett, who works in the capital side, says in some states like South Carolina, you have to file or notify your fee with the state. So there is some filing. And then we got a really good question that asks, could you charge buy here, pay here, and retail sales different doc fees? Let's say 179 retail, 0 for buy here, pay here. Would those customers fall into the same category in the eyes of regulation?
that's a good question. I think maybe somebody listening has that answer, Robert. I don't know. Like we're not attorneys over here.
And I'm not an attorney, but just looking at it, it's like, if it's out of the same business, as someone that's like, then why are you charging the cash deals.
Yeah.
If you're not charging buy here, pay here, why are you charging more for these people than these people? So,
I agree with
I
her.
mean,
I think you would
yeah.
want to be able to have that rationale ready, like explain
But
what's
yeah,
your motivation there
that
for
would
doing
be
that.
something like someone who understands compliance
Yeah.
that could come in and say that. So the Steve Levines and others that are in that world would be a better person to ask that, or ask your state,
Yeah.
your state organization. And then Shelley, it's like, I think this subject matter has hit a nerve with Michelle. I also happen to agree.
Yeah.
It honestly, Shelley, it didn't. Well, okay. It's always been something that I've just been like, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And I've always been a proponent of less is better or none is best. That's just my perspective. Less is better and none is best. And it comes from, that I guess from that feeling I have like with the Airbnb, but it wasn't until we were sitting here that I was like, it's the same thing to me.
Yeah.
Like energetically, like
Yeah.
how it makes me feel,
Right.
it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, I maybe our buy here pay here consumer doesn't get their panties in a twist
Yeah.
because they're not even using Airbnb. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know as a consumer, that's something that just like,
Well, here's the reality. Your consumer is probably not going to choose not to. If they're at your place of business and you've otherwise got the car that they want and they're otherwise satisfied with you, as a dealer, then they're probably not going to resist the dock fee. They might notice it. It's always told people about price is that, the consumer won't necessarily, if they're in a tough spot, you price your cars high, it might not keep them from buying. But you'll never know if a customer politely says, I may come back and see you on Saturday, and then you never hear from them again. You're not going to have good results to know if did they choose to
Was
walk
it
because of
because of
price?
that?
Because the price was, we just don't know. The
Yeah.
reality, I generally say that consumers in buy here, pay here don't not do business with somebody because of price, unless larger markets, when, very competitive market, a lot of dealers up and down Note Row, then that can become a thing.
Could though too, like, we know that our customer sometimes goes sideways. They're angry about something. They feel like they've been slighted by you in the course of the contract. They're like, I'm going to turn you in to better business. We've all heard it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm going to turn you in. And so they get into a contract and go, what was this for? And, they'll contact, it's like they were charging me things that was not, that wasn't the price of the car. It was this. And so is it possible too that, if you got a consumer that is like, this ticks me off, and they're reading the news that dock fees are under scrutiny, and then do you open yourself up to, they charged, this one was about $200. They charged me $400. That's wrong. I'm going to turn them in.
Could be. It
I'm
could
just,
be. I mean,
yeah.
we don't know what triggers the consumer,
Yeah.
right? But it's like, I think it's just like I say, I view it as an opportunity to in your vernacular, less is better. I think it just is. It's just I just think goodwill. It's just simple goodwill. And so why would we not take advantage of an opportunity? And I'll try to go find the episode and we'll share it here. And as this broadcast goes out, we'll share it in the comments. We did one on convenience fees once, and I think the conversation
because
was
there
similar.
was in the news about
Yeah.
it was some people were charging for the helium and tires, or the
Add-ons.
just these little add-ons. And it was interesting though. I just, one last side note, maybe a pitch for some of the things that we're going to be talking about at this event in March, where it's going to be about how do your pathway to success and freedom and all of that. I was reviewing a podcast that we did last spring, it was a 3-part series on blue sky value. And as I was listening, Ken Schulson, it was the second one of the 3, but he said, and this is before all this stuff started coming out, he's like, we have to stay compliant, that the governmental regulators, there are things on the horizon that are going to be put under extreme scrutiny, and we have got to stay compliant. And so it's like, when I was that was day before yesterday, and I was like, oh, this is really, it's timely.
Yeah.
To go through and, take a listen to that as well. So a plug for, it's a Tote the Note podcast that we did last spring, the 3-part series with Brent Carmichael. Ken Shulson was in the first 2, and then the last one, why is the name just completely Mark Burkholder? Thank you. Who we're going to have both of them on the show. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah.
It's not
it's early. She hadn't had enough
it's early. So, listen to that, because that is, it's that whole also part of being sustainable, being, having that freedom is keeping yourself compliant. And so
that's a big piece.
Yeah, it's a really, really good piece. So and we will be talking about
just
that.
Quick
too.
Recap. This coming Friday, Tim and Taylor Bird coming to talk to us about CPI and GAP. Then Chuck Bonanno comes to join us on the 13th, which we'll talk about all the stuff buy here, pay here with Chuck. He's been around the business longer than I have, and I always look forward to a conversation with him. And then Monday the 27th, as you mentioned, Brent and Mark Burkholder. Probably on that week of the 20th, we're going to have Steve Taylor. And Steve Taylor, for those who don't know him, is the director of acquisitions for Car-Mart. And I enjoyed meeting him at the Super Forum. We've been back and forth in conversations, and he will also be among our panelists and
the March
30th event. But yeah, when watch for the date on that, because when you hear Steve Taylor's name, it's fascinating to me to have a conversation with him around what's Car-Mart looking to acquire. He's director of acquisition. They're out there, looking to acquire dealerships. So it'll be a really rich conversation. I look forward to that.
Well, and that's like the whole thing is like, how do you retain and increase value of your business? And so that will be, it's like, well, what are people that are looking to purchase looking for? Which is, it doesn't mean that you have to sell, but it's about increasing your value.
Yeah. Being in a position to sell if
anything should ever happen, which happens.
Sometimes you don't sell, you just, maybe you're transferring it to a family member or whatever. But it's like they're just trying to make sure all the dealers have value. So
Absolutely.
Why don't we jump?
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really grateful. Happy White Hat Wednesday, and we will see you on Friday.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks so much. I'll talk to y'all later.